Shalom Aleichem, everyone. Good evening. We are finished with Gemara Masechet Rosh Hashanah. We have just the end, Be'ezrat Hashem, to do the Siyum. But until we do the Siyum, we decided to do a special shiur. Our dear friend Rabbi Michael Livi is about to an excellent Shofar blower, and we had spoken about this in the past, about coming to do a demonstration. So what I have here tonight, it's a little bit different style than normal. We're not going through the Gemara, but we have different sources from Gemara and from the Shulchan Aruch that everyone here should be familiar with. The reason you'd be familiar with this is because we had learned it, and now what we'll do is we'll learn it, and then what we'll then do is we'll do a demonstration. We're going to learn some new things tonight that we haven't done so far. Okay? So it all starts off with Shulchan Aruch. Shulchan Aruch in Siman Tav Kuf Tzadi 590. Shulchan Aruch tells us as follows, and I'll read it to you. Kama tikiyot chayav adam lishma b'Rosh Hashanah. How many tikiyot, how many sounds does someone need to hear on Rosh Hashanah? Anyone know?
30.
Oh, very good. Well, not yet. Shulchan Aruch says, Tesha, 9. Because it uses the word teruah 3 times in the Torah. It says Yom Teruah, Zichron Teruah, and it tells us 3 times the word teruah, twice by Rosh Hashanah, once by Yovel. And we also have learned this in the Gemara, that every teruah needs to have a simple peshuta, which is what we call a tekiyah, before it and after it. And this is what we call in our shiur with the sandwich metaphor. You have a sandwich. So you need to hear 3 teruot. Teruot is like the middle of the sandwich, is what you would call the meat of a sandwich. But as we explained, and we learned this in the Gemara, that the teruah needs to have a peshuta before it and a peshuta after it. The tekiyah before it and tekiyah after it. So if you have to hear the teruah 3 times, and each teruah has to be sandwiched with 2 tekiyot, how many is that total? 9. That's what Shulchan Aruch tells us. וכל תרועה פשוטה לפניה ופשוטה לאחריה. ומבני השמוע למדו שכל תרועות של חודש השביעי אחד הם בין ראש השנה ובין יום הכיפורים. And we learned this, that all of the teruot that it says in the Torah by the 7th month are always blown anytime we blow the shofar in the 7th month, which means we have it written twice by Rosh Hashanah and once by Yom Kippur, but we connected them. Does anyone remember how we connected them? B'chodesh HaShavi'i, very good. B'chodesh HaShavi'i, once the Gemara says, twice the Gemara says it's a Hekesh, once the Gemara says it's a Gezerah Shavah, but with B'chodesh HaShavi'i we learned that all of the shofar blowings in the 7th month are all connected. So you get to 9, very good. Tesha tekiyot tokin b'chol echad mishnehem, tarat, tarat, tarat. Okay, so you have to blow the shofar 9 times. Tekiyah, teruah, tekiyah, times 3. Tekiyah, teruah, tekiyah, tekiyah, teruah, tekiyah. 3 teruot, sandwiched with tekiyah before and after it. Fine. Now one thing that we mentioned in the Gemara is that the tekiyah is called a peshuta. What does peshuta mean? Yeah, very good. Pashut is simple. In other words, when it comes to the sounds of shofar, pshuta could mean monotone, a single tone. And there's really 2 elements of this. Number 1, it's a unbroken sound. It's an uninterrupted sound. And this is going to be very clearly the contrast of teruah. As we get up there, the teruah will be a broken sound. Tekiyah is a unbroken sound, an uninterrupted sound, meaning there's no breaks. It's a sound without taking breaths in between, or without taking any breaks, pauses of breath in between. And it's a single monotone note. It doesn't go up and down. You don't have it going up and down. That's what a tekiyah is. Okay? The timing of this, based on Shulchan Aruch, there's no maximum length to how long you can make your tekiyah. Your tekiyah could be as long as you want. We had a proof from this in our Gemara. Can anyone tell me the proof from the Mishnah that we know that a tekiyah, if there's no break, no matter how long it is, it's going to be a tekiyah? Just one? The Mishnah told us that if you did your second tekiyah of your first set of 3, and you rolled right into your first tekiyah of your next set of 3. So you did tekiyah teruah, and now when you're ending off your next one, you did tekiyah, and then you did it so long that you wanted to roll into, you just ran the stop sign, and went into your next tekiyah. What did the Mishnah tell us? You have only 1 tekiyah. So you see from here that it could be as long as you want. 1 sound is 1 tekiyah. So there's no maximum length. Although the minimum length of the tekiyah, it's a sandwich, and as part of being a sandwich is your tekiyah needs to be the amount of time, or greater, the amount of time of what's in the middle. So whatever you have in the middle, Tekiah needs to be the same time, and we say it's about approximately 5 seconds. So Rabbi Livi, we have a 5-second Tekiah. I see you have your timer going. Okay. That was like a 6-second Tekiah, very good. So but was there a problem with going extra? No problem with going extra. Okay, very good. So that's basic. We have the Tekiah down. Tekiah goes before and after the Teruah. Now we get to the Teruah. If you're going with the metaphor of a sandwich, the breads, the tekiyot are the breads of the sandwich, and in the middle, your meat of your sandwich is your Teruah. Teruah is, in contrast to Tekiah, it's a broken sound. That's the main definition that we have of a teruah, that it's a broken sound. And the way the Gemara represents a broken sound is, what metaphor does it use to represent a broken sound? Yevaha, very good. So, okay, it uses a cry, some sort of cry. How do we get to that? Very good, Andrew. The way we get to that is as follows. The Gemara says that Rosh Hashanah is Yom Teruah Yeh Lachem, Yom Teruah, or Zichron Teruah, calls it a Teruah, and Targum Onkelos, the translation of Targum is Yom Yevava. It's a Yevava. The way the word Teruah is translated, which we know it's a broken sound, the way it's translated into Aramaic is a Yevava. What is a Yevava? So we have a pasuk in Shoftim with the story of Sisra. Sisra was an army general against the Am Yisrael, against the Jewish people. And Sisra got killed once. Once. And only once. He got killed only once. Sisra was killed, and he was killed by Yael. There's a whole story. And what the text tells us is that his mom is sitting at home waiting for him to come home. It sounds like he was living at home still. His mom is sitting be'ad ha'chalon, looking outside the window, waiting for Sisra to come home. It says that she is looking out of the window, but teyabev em Sisra. And she is doing this verb of Yevava, but teyabev. And from the context, it's clear that she's doing some sort of crying or some sort of moaning. Something that she's feeling the pain that she knows that her son isn't coming home. So you know that a teruah is a Yevava, and you know that a Yevava is a form of crying. So we know that teruah is a sound of crying. However, we have a machloket tanaim. Our Gemara tells us there's two opinions. And it's Gemara in Rosh Hashanah, Daf Lamed Gimel Amud Bet, Amar Abaye. The Abaye tells us, B'hav Adai Pligi. Pligi, the Mishnah and the Braita, two opinions argue and say, Yom Teruah Yelachem, U'mitigarminan Yom Yevava Yelachon. Yom Teruah is translated as a Yom Yevava. Uchtiv Be'emet de Sisra, the mother of Sisra, it says, Be'ad ha'chalon nishkefa. She's looking through the window, but Tiyabev em Sisra, and she's crying. The mother of Sisra is crying. Mar savar ganuche ganach, mar savar yelulei yalav. One opinion says that she was moaning, which is, or sighing, if you will. Whereas the other opinion says no, she's crying, she's wailing. And now you have two opinions as to what is the meat of your sandwich. So, remind us, from the first Shulchan Aruch, how many sounds do you have to hear on Rosh Hashanah? 9. We know what the Tekiah sounds like. But the meat of the sandwich, the teruah, we don't know what it sounds like. There's two opinions. Two Tanaim give us different opinions as to what it is. One is what's called the Sheloshat Shevarim, and one would be what we call a teruah. The one that's representing a moaning sound, like that one is going to be what we call Shevarim. The one that is like a crying or a wailing, that one is what we're going to call teruah. Now, be careful here, because the word teruah of the Torah is a machloket as to whether it's what we call a shevarim or what we call a teruah. Right? You get it? So we borrowed that term that we're not sure what a teruah is. So it's either a shevarim or what we call a teruah. And so these are the two versions of what there is. To get our words straight, the one with the I call it three. The intermediate sounds, the one that's representing the moaning, that's mimicking the moaning or the sighing, that's what we call shivarim. Starts with the shin. Why is that important? Because when you want to abbreviate a tekiah, shivarim, tekiah, we abbreviate it as tashat. Why tashat? Taf, shin, taf. Tashat is Tam Shita. That's when you're going according to the opinion that the thing in the middle, your teruah is actually a shivarim. And the other one is called the teruah. So what does the teruah start with? A taf. So how would you abbreviate tekiah, teruah, tekiah? Would you say tatat? You can say tatat, but what we do is we don't like the extra taf there, so we change it. We use the second letter of the word of teruah and use a rish. So it's called tarat. So now for shorthand, you have tekiah, shivarim, tekiah, which is tashat, and you have tekiah, teruah, tekiah, which is tarat. These are the two opinions as to how you fulfill your 9 blasts of shofar. So how many do we have total? If you're going to do one version of teruah as a shivarim and another version of teruah as what we call teruah, how many do you have total so far? You have to do 9 of each. So that is 18. So we're at 18. Okay? Now, we're going to ask Rabbi Livi to come blow the shofar for us. But before that, just to say a word about the timing, because this is where there's many opinions about a shivarim, what it's supposed to sound like. Many opinions, and one person's shivarim is another person's tekiah. It becomes, because shivarim, if you do it too long, it becomes a tekiah, right? Because it's like an intermediate one. The teruah, that's not going to become a tekiah, but do, that could turn into a tekiah if you don't have the right timing. So the timing of the shivarim is probably the most difficult. So you have to be very careful. Each shever from the shivarim, one blast is what we call a shever. Each one should be less than a second, so that in total you have about 2.5 seconds. If you're doing 3 of them, total you have about 2.5 seconds. Each one is less than a second. So now you have 2.5 seconds in the middle. With that, we'll ask for a demonstration, a 2.5 second demonstration of your shivarim.
Just to clarify, Rabbi Savzari, using his analogy of the bread, the sandwich, you always want the breads of the sandwich to be thicker in this analogy than the meat. So right now we're doing tashat, so we explained that the shivarim are totaling 2.5 seconds. So the tekiah will be shorter than the initial 5 seconds, it's only going to be around 3 seconds. And we'll explain when that's longer. This is just tashat.
Okay, so now let's talk about the teruah, the timing of the teruah. Remember, what we're calling a teruah is just one opinion of what the Torah's teruah is. You get it? I think it would have been nice if we used a different term for this teruah. It would be less confusing, but this is part of the confusion. The Torah uses the word teruah, which could be either shivarim or what we call a teruah. Okay, so now what we're calling a teruah is what we'll call, for a lack of a better term, the 9 little blasts, the staccato. The staccato, the small, the wailing, the crying, okay? So there's no maximum length, and the minimum length is equal to the time that it takes to blow all 3 shivarim. So now what we're learning is the meat of your tashat, meaning however long you have your shivarim, you want it to be the same as the meat of your tarat. So it's going to be the same length. So now if you have around 2.5 seconds, you want to get the tekiah, the staccato of the teruah rather, in the same amount of time, which is approximately 2.5 seconds. So now we're going to do tarat. Okay, very good. Baruch Hashem. So far, let's do the build-up. The Torah says the word teruah 3 times. So you need to hear 3 teruot. But we also know that every teruah has a tekiah before it and a tekiah after it. So each one actually becomes 3. So you end up from 3, you end up to 9. But now we said that there's 2 opinions in our Mishnah as to what's in the middle. The teruah, is it either what we call a shivarim or what we call a teruah? So from 9 we got up to 18. So now we're up to 18. Until we got to Rabbi Abu. Some people will say it's Rabbi Abahu, some will say it's Rabbi Abu. I switch off depending on how I feel in the moment. So this Rabbi Abu, the Gemara in Rosh Hashanah Daf Lamed Aleph tells us, Atkin Rabbi Abu beKesari. The city of Caesarea, of Kesari, Rabbi Abu was the rabbi, let's say, of the Rosh Yeshiva of the yeshiva there. and he made a takana for his yeshiva. Now this takana, this enactment, this institution that he made for his yeshiva ends up being accepted by everyone. It's very interesting how this is not from the times of the Mishnah. Remember, the beforehand is the machloket of the Mishnah. The Abaye tells us the machloket between the Tanaim. Now the Rabbi Abu is an Amora, and he made a takana. What did he say? It says tekiyah shelosha shivarim teruah tekiyah. He says now those two things that are in the middle of a shivarim and a teruah, I want to do a combination. Add the two together. Tekiyah shivarim teruah tekiyah, or what we call tashrat. Why tashrat? It's the same first letters. Tekiyah, shivarim, teruah, we're using the resh, and a tekiyah again, tashrat. Now why? The Gemara says, hold on a second. Are you doing this and getting rid of the tashat? Because tashat is still important because maybe you shouldn't be adding your teruah in the middle. I said, no, he's still going to do the tashat. The Gemara says, okay, fine. But what if you go according to the opinion that says it's a teruah? Then you really should be doing tarat. If you're doing tarat, doing a tashrat, you're doing something extra in the middle. He says, no. He's going to do that also. Wait, hold on a second. You're going to do your tashat, you're going to do your tarat, and then you're going to come and add a new one of tashrat? What's the point? What exactly are you doing? So he's saying how really it's possible that just as machloket, as we don't know what the crying is the crying a shivarim or is the crying a teruah, maybe it's a combination, says Rabbi Abahu. Maybe it's a combination, and it should be. Someone starts off his morning like, like that. Starts off moaning, transitions into crying. So the Gemara says, okay, hold on a second. So if you're going to say, maybe it's a shivarim, maybe it's a teruah, maybe it's a shivarim teruah, why didn't you say it's a teruah shivarim? Do it the other way also. And the Gemara's response is because it never happens that someone goes, it doesn't happen that way. Okay, whatever. We could duke this out later if you want, but this is the way the Gemara says that you start off with the moaning, and the moaning turns into a cry. So Rabbi Abahu comes and he adds what we call a tashrat. So Shulchan Aruch is telling you from the Torah you have a minimum of 9, but the question of what's in the middle, what's the meat of that sandwich? Now what we're saying is that there's a third opinion as to what's in the middle. It's either a shivarim or a teruah or a shivarim teruah. So very good. So now follow the math. We said if it's just shivarim, you have tashat, that's 9. Now if it's teruah, that's another 9, you have 18. But now let's say it's shivarim teruah, or in other words, tashrat. So how many more do we have to do? You have to do another 12. Now, what's tricky about this is that when you say 12, really, according to this opinion, your teruah is what's in the middle. So your shivarim teruah is really just one thing.
It's 9.
So it really should be counted as 9. But since we're counting shivarim as its own and teruah as its own, we're going to count them as their own as part of tashrat also. I'm just giving you the technicalities here. One technicality I'm pointing out is the word teruah has two meanings here. Right, the word teruah is a teruah of Torah, which could be either a shivarim or a teruah or a shivarim teruah. And then the other thing is as we're counting them, we count a shivarim as one, we count it as a teruah as one, and really you should count shivarim teruah as one also, but we're counting them as two just to keep our count consistent across. So now we're going to do tashrat.
So this is how we introduced the class of Rabbi Sephardic about, back to the analogy, the bread, meat, bread. So now, because we have tashrat, we have shivarim and teruah, and we've already explained that the minimum or the ideal time for shivarim, 3 shivarim, is 2.5 seconds, and the minimum for teruah is equal to the minimum of the shivarim, which is also 2.5 seconds. So now our meat is we're going to try to keep the meat as 5 seconds long. So therefore, each tekiyah, each bread must be 5 seconds long as well. So now you'll see with the tashrat, the tekiyot will be longer. Obviously the middle is longer because we have both shivarim and teruah. And the final tekiyah will be longer as well. Yeah?
Oh.
Okay, Baruch Hashem. Baruch Hashem. Yeah, I got confused. Okay, so now we're up to 30, right? you have to do 3 from the Torah. The 3 has a tekiyah before it and after it, so that gets us to 9. But what's in the middle? There's 3 opinions of it. So if you do times 3, it gets you to 27. But as I said, you're going to count the shvarim teruah as an extra one, so you have to add another 3, you get to 30. So we have 30, we've done 30 so far. Next question. When do we blow the shofar? Okay, we know we're going to do it on Rosh Hashanah. Now, on the day of Rosh Hashanah, at what part of the tefillah process should it be? Oh, okay. So there's going to be really 2 slots. It starts off. One slot is during the Musaf prayer. And in fact, the Gemara, and there's a Mishnah, Daf Lamed Ben Amud Aleph, where we spoke about this, how the Mishnah tells us that the tekiyot have to be al seder habrachot. For example, there's Rabbi Akiva that says you should do the Kiddushat Hashem mitkolel malchiot im Kiddushat Hayom v'tokea, zichronot v'tokea, shofarot v'tokea. So as we speak about this, really we need to speak about Musaf, and this is something we discussed at length, that Musaf of Rosh Hashanah has 3 additional sections. What are the 3 additional sections that a Musaf of Rosh Hashanah has? What are the 3 additional sections? Very good. Okay. Malchiyot, Zichronot, Shofarot. Malchiyot has to do with kingship. It's attesting to Hashem being the ultimate king. Zichronot has to do with the remembrance. It's dealing with Hashem's attribute of remembering all of the deeds of mankind, all of our actions, and the fact that He's examining them on this day of Rosh Hashanah, which is Yom Adin. It's a day of judgment. And the 3rd section is Shofarot. That has to do with Shofarot, which is the mitzvah of the day. So these are 3 things that are pertinent, relevant to the day. Malchiot, because we're saying that Hashem is the ultimate king. Zichronot, because Hashem is remembering everything today. And Shofarot, because we're blowing the shofar, we're doing the mitzvah of shofar on that day. And as the Gemara explains, for each section we're going to read how many verses? 10 psukim from the Tanakh. What's the breakdown? 4 from the Torah. 3 from Nevi'im, 3 from Ketuvim, or to be in the appropriate order is 3 from Torah, 3 from Ketuvim, which we said is always Tehillim, 3 from Nevi'im, and then 1 from the Torah. Why does Ketuvim come before Nevi'im? Because as Tosfot explains, it's because chronologically the Ketuvim that we're quoting of David HaMelech comes before all of the Nevi'im. So he actually comes before them. Okay? Very good. Good memory. Very good. So now, what we're learning here is that after each of these sections, you have to blow a set of tekiyah, Torah, tekiyah. Okay? Remember, you have to blow how many times? So you have to blow 3 tekiyot, 3 teruot on Rosh Hashanah. So the way it's set up is you do malchiot, you do one version of tekiyah, Torah, tekiyah. You do zichronot, you do tekiyah, Torah, tekiyah, and then you do shofarot, tekiyah, Torah, tekiyah. But there are 3 opinions as to what's the teruah. So this is what we do. We'll read Malchiot, and then we'll do Tashrat, Tashat, Tarat. So that we have done 1 version correct. If it's the Tashrat opinion, we did that. If it's Tashat opinion, we did that. Or if it's the Tarat opinion, we did that. So after Malchiot, you have to do 1 teruah with the tekiyah before and after. So we're doing it because you're doing a Tashrat, Tashat, Tarat. Whichever one is correct, you're doing it. After Zichronot, you're going to do it again. Tashrat, Tashat, Tarat. And after Shofarot, you're going to Tashrat, Tashat, Tarat. Each time, how many? Yes, after each bracha, you're going to do 10 total. Tashrat is 4, Tashat is 3, Tarat is 3, ends up being 10. So you do 10 after your Malchiot, 10 after your Zichronot, 10 after your Shofarot, in an effort to make sure that you get your 3, the correct 3. You get it? Okay. So that is what the Mishnah tells us, that you should do it al seder habrachot. Yes?
So you're not supposed to do 3 of each after each of the tekilot?
So there are some shitot, some opinions that say you should do tashrat, tashrat, tashrat the first time, tashat, tashat, tashat the second time, tarat, tarat, tarat the third time. But we don't. Right now, I'm not going through all of the opinions, I'm going through how we hold. And in our Sidur, this is how we do it. We do tashrat, tashat, tarat each time. You're not supposed to do tashat 3 times in a row during the Musaf prayer, exactly as you said, okay? So, after the Musaf prayer, we're done with our requirement of the day, okay? Because we've done everything. We've covered all of our bases, we're done. We do Chazara of the Musaf. We do the same thing all over again. This is our minhag. So the 30 that we did during the lachash, the silent Musaf prayer, guess what? You're doing again the 30 during the chazara.
What do we do before?
Oh, okay, so I'm going out of order. But the reason I'm going out of order is to point out that our Mishnah tells us that the tekiyot should be al seder barachot. The tekiyot should be together with the barachot. So we're doing it. Now, exactly as you said, we also do all of this 30, albeit in a different order, but we do all of this 30 before you start the Musaf. And before we start the Musaf, this time, Andrew, we do Tashrat, 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 which is 12, Tashat, 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 which is 9, Tarat, 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 which is 9, which ends up being 30. So the truth is, even before Musaf prayer, you're done with your tikiyot of the mitzvah of the day, you're done. You get it? Because we know that we have to do 30. We explained that. We already proved that. So we do the 30 before you start praying, so you did your mitzvah. Now you do another 30 during the Musaf prayer, and you do another 30 during the Chazarah. So by the time you're done with Chazarah, you end up with 90. So one question we have is, fine, you want to do it during the Musaf prayer, I understand why it's 60, because we're repeating it. Okay, you're repeating it, you repeat it. By the way, not everyone does the shofar both times. We do. There's some that only do it during the Chazarah, I believe. We do it both times. But fine, but why do you have to do it before and you have to do it after? If you're already going to do it during the Musaf prayer, so why do we need to precede it and do the tekiyot beforehand? Okay, so this was a Gemara that we learned a long time ago. It was on Daf Tet Zayin, I believe. It was a Rabbi Yitzchak. There was a Daf of the Gemara where Rabbi Yitzchak was on fire. Rabbi Yitzchak gave like 9 different teachings, and I forgot the exact number, but goes from one after the other after another, asking all of these questions about Rosh Hashanah. Beautiful. Rabbi Yitzchak takes over the Daf, and he asks the question of why do we blow the shofar before and why do we blow that after? Now, let me just say a word about how he words his question, because it's important for the halacha. He says, "Lama tokin u'meri'in kishen yoshvin, v'tokin u'meri'in kishen omdim." He says, why do they blow the shofar when they're sitting and then again when they're standing? So one thing I just want to explain, when he says they blow the shofar when they're standing, what is he talking about? He's talking about the Musaf prayer, what we call the Amidah. What does Amidah mean? Standing. So in contrast to the Amidah, what's before the Amidah is when you're sitting. So it says Kishen Yoshvin when they're sitting. It doesn't necessarily mean that they're actually sitting. It just means that they're not part of the Amidah yet. They're not standing still yet. And what's interesting is that for the shofar, our custom is to stand. Has anyone ever sat during that before everyone stand, we say the bracha of shofar, we say the bracha of shechianu. So even that is standing. But the key here is that it's not part of the Amidah. That's why it's called Kishen Yoshvin, when they're sitting. Meaning, in contrast of later, which you have to be standing because it's part of the Musaf prayer, now you're not part of the Musaf prayer, you're not standing in Amidah, you're still sitting. And by the way, there are some that actually do when they're sitting. Because it says, it's called Kishen Yoshvin. Or elsewhere, Shulchan Aruch will say it's Tikiyot Demiyushav, of when you're sitting, or Tikiyot Deme'omed, or Deme'omad, or when you're standing. Tikiyot of when you're standing, okay? So, quick pop quiz. What is the Tikiyot of Demiyushav, or Kishen Yoshvin, when you're sitting? Which one is that? Before Musaf. Very good. And the Tikiyot and the Teruot of Kishen Omdin or Deme'omed, which one is that? That's the Musaf prayer one. Okay? So good. So now, Rabbi Yitzchak, one second, Rabbi Yitzchak asks, why do you need to do all of it? Does anyone remember the answer? Kedei la'arbev ha'satan. His answer is to confuse the Satan. That Rashi says very nicely that Kishe Yishma Yisrael mechavavin et mitzvot mistatamim devarav. When Hashem sees that we're doing the mitzvot so much, we don't need to do this shofar, but Hashem asks us to do the shofar, and we're doing it, and we're doing it more than we even have to. We're doing more than just the minimum. Then Ribono Shel Olam quiets the Satan. The Arbev over here, the way Rashi explains it is that he weakens the Satan because we're doing more mitzvot. This is how we get to 90. How did we get to 90? Okay, let's see how we got to 90. One more time. How many teruot from the Torah? 3. Right, yeah. I'm going to get to the 30 that you're about to do. Teruot of the Torah, 3. But what do you need to do? Tekiyah before and after. So you get to 9. But the Teruah, how many versions are there? 3. So how many does that get us to? To get us to 27 or to 30. So we get to 30. And you're going to do 30 before Musaf, 30 during Musaf, 30 during the Chazara Musaf, so you get to 90. And we're done, right? No. How many do we actually blow? 101. So how do we get ourselves to 101? We already are at 90. How do we get to 101? This has to do based on a Tosfot. Tosfot in Rosh Hashanah Daf Lamed Gimel, Dibur Malchil Shiur, he tells us as follows. Rabbi Aruch Piresh, he quotes the Aruch that says, here, etc. Al Seder Keneged Me'a Peyot Depaya Imei Desisra. This is based on, I've heard it quoted as a Yerushalmi, but the Aruch here that Tosfot is quoting us tells us that the mother of Sisra cried 100 times. Okay? So she cried 100 times. And we're learning part of this crying from her. And we're already at 90. So it's like, all right, you know what, while we're here, let's just try to break a Guinness World Record, right? She did 100, you're already at 90. The Chazan's along could blast out another 11 to get us to pass the record. So this is what we're saying, is that we're trying to outdo her. We're trying to do Imei Desisra. We're already at 90, she got to 100, we want to get to 101. So what do? We do another 10 of Tashrat, Tarat, during the Kaddish Titkabah that comes right after Musaf. Right after Musaf, we have the Kaddish, the long, elaborated Kaddish Titkabah that says Sha'arei Ora, Sha'arei Baracha, Sha'arei Gila, Sha'arei Titzah, everyone answers Amen to many, many times. So during that one, we do another 10. Tashrat, Tarat, that gets us to 100. And now we have only one left. So after Aleinu L'Shabeach, some do it right at the beginning of Aleinu L'Shabeach, some do it at the end of Aleinu L'Shabeach, we do it at the end of Aleinu L'Shabeach. We do what's called a Teruah Gedolah, and this one you just do what we call a Teruah. You do it for as long as you want. I would ask Mike to come do that, but that's going to eat 4 minutes out of the recording here. So we don't need to do a Teruah Gedolah. You could just imagine it's just a Teruah that we did beforehand. And how long do you go for that? For as long as you want. Usually it's a competition to see who goes longer, and the one that can sneak in a breath in between is the one that wins. That's usually what happens. But no one sees, but we all know. Okay, so let's just conclude with one point of discussion about the Tashrat, and then I'm going to say one thing about the mother of Sisra. Tashrat. There's some discussion about this Tashrat. Remember, it's a combination. So I have a question for you. When you're doing the Shivarim Teruah, the combination one that Rabbi Abahu instituted for us, should you take a break between your Shivarim and your Teruah, or should you roll right into it? What do you think? Roll into it, break. Why do you say roll into it?
Because it's one sound.
Very good. According to the opinion of Rabbi Abahu, this is your Teruah. Your Teruah is a combination of Shivarim Teruah. So you should do, just go straight into it. But you feel vehemently you disagree. Why do you think you should take a break? So what Andrew is saying is that it's a combination, but it's a combination of two distinct things that you're doing them together. And if you roll into it, you may not fully hear what it is. You should be a Shivarim and a Teruah with a breath in between. So let me read to you what Shulchan Aruch. Which one do you think Shulchan Aruch is going to say? Like, only one of you could be right. I'm kidding. You're both right. But I'll tell you what Shulchan Aruch says. Shloshas Shivarim sarich la'asotam b'nishima achat. The 3 Shivarim you have to do in one breath. That means when you do, you shouldn't go do, you shouldn't do that. Right? The 3 Shivarim should be in one breath. Aval Shlosha Shivarim u'Teruah, the Tashrat, but when you do Shivarim Teruah in Tashrat, Yesh Omrim she'eno sarich la'asotam b'nishima achat. Some say that you don't have to do it in one breath, meaning Andrew, what you're saying is to take a break in between. Vehu shelo yeshev hafsaka yoter mikdei neshima. Your break can't be exaggerated, but you can have a break in between. It's the first opinion. Some say you should do in one breath, exactly as you said, because this is your teruah. You should not take a breath in between. So what does Shulchan Aruch say to do? Someone who fears Hashem, meaning if you really want to do this right, we're doing all of these things, it would be so sad that we lost because of something this small. You're doing so many tikiyot, we want to get it right. So what should we do? Here we go. Tells us that when you do a tashrat before Musaf, don't take a break in between, do it in one shot. But when you do the tikiyot during Musaf or after Musaf, you take a break in between. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask Rabbi Livi to come do both, but I'll say the Ashkenazim here, the Ramah says, Hakol b'shtei neshimot. The Rama says to do it in 2 separate breaks. But what we do is we follow Shulchan Aruch. For the first set of 30, before Musaf, we do not take a break in between. And for the next set of 30, and the next remaining 70, we do take a break in between. And then we'll conclude with one last idea.
We'll start with Tashrat before, and then we'll do Tashrat after. Tashrat before. Before, and now we'll do it during the Amidah and Chazara and the last Kaddish.
Was everyone able to pick up on that? The second time, it's as though like he just did a sniff, like he wanted to know if like a quick sniff, right? So this is where you see now, if you want to see the difference between shofar blower who knows the halachot and knows what he's doing versus someone that knows how to play a trumpet and picks this up instead. You get to see the difference with these halachot. Someone who's doesn't know the halachot, you know how difficult it is to do the timing of 5 seconds or 2.5 seconds, or to take a break in between, not to take a break in between. I can't even, forget about the fact that I'm terrible at blowing the shofar, but to try to do this while you have a clock in front of you is so difficult. And then to do it while you have a mental counter, it's extremely difficult. It's very important to have a Baal Tokeh who knows all of these halachot and is practice. It's not just getting the sound out. It's getting the sound out, getting at the right amount of time, making sure you take the breaks where you're supposed to, you don't take the breaks where you're not supposed to. So it's extremely difficult. So now, B'ezras Hashem, you get to appreciate or about Tokeh when someone is blowing the shofar, they don't know halachot. The last thing that I want to end up is, and I said this during the shiur once, is the question of this whole idea of the sounds of a teruah. Like I said, we know that in contrast of a tekiyah, a teruah is a broken sound. That we know. But the Gemara tells us that it sounds like a cry. And how do you know it sounds like a cry? Because the word teruah is translated as yevava. The word yevava is brought up Sefer Shoftim as when the mother of Sisra, v'tiyabev em Sisra, and she cried. And now there's 3 versions of how she cried. She either did a sighing sound, or she was wailing, or she did a combination of sighing going into wailing. So based on that, we have our entire shofar play. Isn't it wild that our entire minhag is looking to the mother of Sisra? Sisra was a general who was fighting against Am Yisrael. He was our enemy. And his mom was crying for him. And so we say, oh, that's a good person to follow. Him? There's no one else that you can give to us as a metaphor. So this is one of the explanations that I read, is that we know that Sisra is a terrible person because he was our enemy, he was fighting against us, he was trying to hurt us, trying to kill us. It's a terrible person. But even when someone is a terrible person, the mother of a person will love the person no matter what. You could be the worst person in the world. The person's mom is going to love them and is going to feel pain when that person feels pain, and that person is going to be happy when that person feels happy, because that's the mom. At the end of the day, that's the person's mom. And what we're pointing to is that Ribono Shel Olam, Hashem, the mother of Sisra, no matter how bad he was, she loved him, she cared about him, she was sad when he got hurt, and she cried for him. So we're asking you, Ribono Shel Olam, we've done things that are wrong. We're asking you for our forgiveness, but we're asking you to treat us like we're your children, because we are. You're our Father, and no matter what we did wrong, we know that you love us and you care about us, and we ask for you to treat us like being as you're our Father. So this is one of the explanations that I read, and I shared this in the past, that this is why we have all of this after Em Sisra. Because even though Sisra was terrible, Em Sisra was still his mom. And no matter how we act, Ribono Shel Olam is still like that. So Be'ezras Hashem, with this we're wrapping up Gemara Masechet Rosh Hashanah. We did the demonstration, but also, like I said, hopefully this is something that we go into the Chagim, we're going into the holidays. We'll be able to know exactly how to fulfill this mitzvah. We know all of the different opinions, all of the different sounds. When someone asks you a question of how many sounds of the shofar do you have to hear on Rosh Hashanah, you could say, I could answer this question however I want. I could say 3, I could say 9, I could say 27, I could say 30, I could say 90, I could say 100, 101, whatever you want, but now you know the build-up. Be'ezon Hashem, I hope this, we're a little bit far from Rosh Hashanah now, but hopefully Be'ezon Hashem, all of our tefillah will be answered with Tova.